This day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears.
Is not this Joseph's son?
Ye will surely say unto me, whatsoever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in thy country. Verily I say unto you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. But I tell you of a truth. Many widows were in Israel in the days of Elias, but unto none of them was Elias sent, save unto Sarepta, a city of Sidon, unto a woman that was a widow. And many lepers were in Israel, and none of them were cleansed, saving Naaman, the Syrian.
When they heard this, everyone in the synagogue was enraged. They sprang to their feet and hustled him out of the town. They took him up to the brow of a hill their town was built on, intending to throw him down the cliff. But he slipped through the crowd and walked away. One of the worst things I think I've ever done is take joy from someone. And I've done it more than once. They'd done something and they were delighted with their effort. And I didn't think it was very good and told them. And in that instant, their joy turned to sadness. And I've regretted it ever since. It was years ago, and it's haunted me ever since. And in the gospel, I think Jesus says something similar. He turns people's joy into sadness and anger, rage. The gospel we've just listened to continues from last Sunday's gospel. Last Sunday, Jesus read from the prophet Isaiah about the fulfillment of God's promise. He gives the scroll back and says, this text is being fulfilled even as you listen. And that's where we pick the gospel up, the story up today. This text is being fulfilled as you listen. And he won the approval of all. They were overjoyed. The promise in which they had hoped for generations is being fulfilled in their hearing, in their lifetime. And they are overjoyed. Why doesn't Jesus just leave them with that moment of joy? Why doesn't he just enjoy the moment himself, enjoy the acclamation of the crowd? Because it's based on a half-truth. Not that there's anything wrong with what Jesus says. What he says is completely true. The promises of God are fulfilled in him. But not in the way that the people before him think that they are. Not according to their expectation, and not for the reasons that they think either. And to leave them with their misunderstanding is to allow them to be misled. Not that Jesus has misled them in any way, but their expectations and their poor understanding of what Jesus is saying means they are wrong. They don't understand. And to leave them there would be for Jesus to allow them to be misled. And he can't do that. News, well, as I sit and record this today, we're awaiting the report on all the parties that are reportedly taking place or have taken place in Downing Street. Over months now, the news has been full of parties and gatherings and cheese and wine and cake. And frequently, people have been asked, did these parties happen? Have you been present? And the answer has been, no rules were broken. But But it's not a full answer, is it? It's not an answer to the question that was asked. Whether rules were broken or not doesn't answer, did these things happen? If no rules were broken, why not just say, yes, they happened, but they were all in accord with the guidelines that we were imposing on everybody else. But they haven't. They're half-truths, and they're half-truths, to my mind, intended to mislead, to misguide people, to avoid having to reveal truth. That's what Jesus came to do away with. That's why Jesus had to continue saying what he said, that God's mercy was being shown not just to the Jews who had hoped in the promise, but to all sorts of people. And all sorts of people are being offered the salvation, the fullness of life that Jesus came to reveal. Offered the love of God that Jesus reveals in his word and in his actions. Jesus came to do away with the half-truths that had been fed to the people through the religion and the religious authorities of their day. He came to offer them the fullness of truth. You know, the best bit of advice that I was ever given in seminary came from the canon law class. At the end of what was a 4-year course, the lecturer summed up much of his course by saying, when you're caught out doing something wrong, and you will be because we all do, hold your hands up and admit it. Apologize, make what changes are necessary, and move on. I think it's good advice. But it's hard to live by because all sorts of things get in the way of admitting that we're wrong. And pride plays a part, doesn't it? Oh, I don't want someone to win an argument again. I want to win the argument. Ego is part of that too. There's a desire to keep doing what we're doing in the way we're comfortable doing it and not be challenged and not have to change because, well, it's not the right thing to do. Or to do something that we would prefer not to. But it really is what's being asked of us by God, not just of people. There are all sorts of things that get in the way of us accepting the fullness of truth. To try and persuade ourselves that, no, actually, the bit of the truth I've got is all I need. That too is what Jesus came to do away with. If we are to respond to his invitation, we need to understand that invitation. We need to understand the cost of discipleship, of following, as well as the rewards. And we need to be willing to accept the cost of discipleship, the fullness of truth. That, I think, is the challenge of the gospel. That we are to embrace the fullness of truth. All of it. Not just the bits that we're drawn to. We're to be truthful in our dealings with others. Not just the bits that suit our purpose, that further our own ends, but that reveal the fullness of God's truth that we're invited to share with others.